Okay, good morning, everybody. So today we're discussing step 4 in the sequential evaluation process of determining whether or not you are disabled. So again, as we start each one of these lectures, whatever, to help you understand disability, we go through the 5-step sequential evaluation process. So remember, in order for you to be disabled, it does not necessarily mean that you've got this condition or a combination of conditions that are impairments, disease, etc., that keeps you from being able to work. So there is quite a complicated process to determine whether or not you're able to work, or you're disabled. So the first step, of course, is that you're not working above a certain level. Now, we've talked in the past about SGA, substantial gainful activity, and you can go back and review that. So just know that you're not working above a certain level. Okay, the second one is that your condition is severe. Severity of your impairment means that it's interrupting your ability to do basic work activities, concentrate, lift, bend, stand, reach, follow instructions, things like that. Third step is, does your condition meet a listing? Well, a listing is nothing more than a really complicated definition of what your impairment is. It's very difficult for people to meet a medical listing. In fact, it's pretty rare. If you have a mental impairment, oftentimes you want to argue that it meets a listing because the definition of, for bipolar, ADHD, things like that, you can use the medical records easier than you can for physical impairments. Okay, the fourth thing is, and we're going to go back to the fourth thing, is that you can't do something that you've done before. You can't do any kind of job that you've done in the past. Okay, so we'll define that here in a second. And then step 5 is that Social Security can't make a determination that you're able to do something different, do something, some other kind of job. Okay, and that takes into consideration your age, your education, and your transferable work skills. Okay, so let's go back to step 4, because today we're talking about step 4. On step 4 is that Social Security cannot make a determination that you can do some kind of work that you've done within the last 15 years. All right, so a 15-year time span is a relevant period, either from the time in which you filed generally or the time in which you alleged your onset date. Okay, so and your onset date is the date in which you're saying that you became disabled. Okay, so what Social Security will do at step 4 is they will look back 15 years and see if you can do some kind of job that you've done in the past. If you can, then you failed step 4. You don't get to move on to step 5, and Social Security considers you disabled. So what's a really good example to use here? Okay, so we'll get into RFC, residual functional capacity, in just a second, okay? But what's really important, because Social Security cannot make a determination that you can return back to work that you've done over the last 15 years without determining what your residual functional capacity is. I know big words and ridiculous meanings, but it is what it is. Okay, so let's talk about a good example. Okay, so for example, let's say that in the last 15 years, you did some type of sedentary work. You did work where you sat at a desk all day. And then you decided to go and do construction work where you actually physically worked. Okay. Excuse me. Okay, so let's say you're unable to do that construction work anymore, and it was a heavy type of work. You were lifting, 30, 40 pounds all day long, or frequently throughout the day. You were lifting as much as 80 pounds or more as your heaviest weight you were lifting. You were standing, walking, climbing scaffolding, ladders, things like that. throughout 6 hours out of an 8-hour day, or even 7 hours out of an 8-hour day. So you know it was a heavy type of job. And Social Security determines that you have the RFC, the residual functional capacity, to at least do sedentary work. Okay, so it looks back 15 years. Well, we know you can't do the construction work anymore because that's either really heavy or even extra heavy type of work, okay? So that gets ruled out. But then it goes back and it looks at this desk job that you had. Well, most desk jobs are sedentary jobs, meaning that, you know, you're mostly carrying file folders, things like that. You're sitting for 6 out of 8 hours a day, walking or standing possibly, excuse me, up to 2 hours a day, but not at one time, okay? So Social Security looks back and says, okay, well, you know, you can't do the construction job, but you can do this sedentary job that you've done in the past. Well, lo and behold, then you're not disabled, and you don't get to move on to step 5 to determine if there's some other type of job you can do. You are simply considered not disabled, your claim is denied, and you're expected to return back to that type of work. Okay. What is residual functional capacity? Well, residual functional capacity is an assessment made by the judge at the hearing, your adjudicator that is looking at your claim before it has to go to a hearing, if it does have to go to a hearing. And what an RFC is that it's stating what the maximum ability you can work at. So work is divided into different levels, okay? So work is divided into sedentary, light, medium, heavy, and extra heavy. So those are classifications of work, and they're determined on how you can lift, stand, walk, carry things, okay? So a lot of times when I have my clients, I say, well, you know, that was a sedentary job. Well, they take offense at it as though it was a lazy job, like they were lazy at their job. That's not what it's saying. It's saying that you sat 6 out of 8 hours a day. Well, look, I'm a lawyer. I sit 6 out of 8 hours a day. I have a sedentary job. The most I ever carry is these file folders right here. You know, I mean, that's it in my briefcase. So I have a very sedentary job. So, but the real trick about it, and the argument comes into play, is, well, who gets to determine that you have the residual functional capacity to do sedentary or light work or medium work even? Well, it's a judgment call. And that's why lawyers practice in Social Security disability. And so, and just like the disability, the disability process itself, it's 5 steps, it's complicated, and there's judgments made along the way. It's not scientific. And so if you're filing for disability benefits, and you're getting denied at either the initial application or the first appeal, which is your reconsideration, and you haven't gone to hearing yet, you know, consider that more than likely somebody that's reviewing your claim is saying you've got the residual functional capacity to do light or sedentary work. That's what it generally comes down to. So if you do have to go to a hearing, you know, if you get your disc, you're not represented, you're not an attorney, you don't have an attorney, you're going to represent yourself at your hearing, well, then get your disc with your medical records and look in when you get your disc and you look at it, it's broken up between A, B, C, D, E, and F. Okay, F is all your medical records. Well, obviously, more than likely, quite a few medical records are missing out of your file because doctors and hospitals are really bad about sending them in, and Social Security doesn't really have the patience to keep requesting it over and over and over again from your doctors or from a hospital. Okay, so look in Section A though, and there's going to be a disability determination explanation. So unless you're in West Los Angeles, then you only apply once and then go to a hearing. Most every place else in the country does an initial application, a reconsideration, which is your first appeal, and then you schedule for your hearing. Okay, so there's 3 steps there. The first 2 steps, you can't see your medical records. You can, but you're going to be wasting your time. So at the hearing level, you get a disc if you're not represented by an attorney that can't see your medical records online. And then go look in Section A. And in Section A, it's going to be a disability determination explanation. Okay, well, look on the first one and the second one if you've been denied twice. And go back to not the last page, but either the second or third to last page, and you're going to see what Social Security is saying is your residual functional capacity. Once it determines your residual functional capacity, it looks back at those 15 years, and it determines whether or not you can do the work you've done in the past, the relevant past, which is 15 years. So now you're looking at step 4. And so if you're getting denied before your hearings, it's very likely you're either getting denied at step 4 or at step 5. But once they determine your residual functional capacity, then they'll make a determination. Step 4, can he return back to past work? He or she return back to past work. If not, then you move on to step 5, and your residual functional capacity is used, taken into consideration with your age, your education, and now your transferable work skills. These work skills that you go back to step 4, the jobs over the last 15 years that you learn that you can apply to new work. Okay? So I'm going to end this. I'm going to make it real quick here. But you go back and you look at those. Let's go back to your jobs again that we were talking about. Construction, there's probably not a lot of transferable work skills there. It's heavy labor. If you were a framer, a concrete guy, you were a trim carpenter, a cornice guy, shingles, sheetrocker, etc. There's not a lot of transferable work skills if you're using your back and your legs and your body, your brawn to work every day, okay, if you're a laborer. But let's go back to that desk job. Well, at that desk job, let's say you had management duties, skills. And as a matter of fact, you even hired and fired people. Okay, now you're talking about transferable work skills. So let's say just for giggles here that you couldn't do any of the work over that last 15 years, but we're still talking about that desk job you had before you went and worked construction. Now you move on to step 5. Do you have transferable work skills? If you got those transferable work skills, then you're going to probably be very hard pressed to prove that you're disabled at that point at step 5 as well. So, but there's other considerations that are taken into, there are other things that are taken into consideration as well. Anyway, any of you worked at a desk job over the last 15 years, don't let that, don't start thinking, well, I might as well not even apply for disability, because look, that's not it in its entirety, okay? The process is quite complicated. Look, if you need to talk about your case, please call me at the office, 888-780-9125. And for those of you that are watching this on YouTube for some reason, we handle disability cases, Social Security disability cases throughout all of Texas and California. So take care. Thank you.